Deep underground in an undisclosed location, Tread Comics presents G.I. Joe, a real American hero. G.I. Joe, a real American hero, also known as Action Force in the UK, is a half-hour American animated television series created by Ron Friedman. Based on the toy line from Hasbro, the cartoon ran in syndication from 1983 to 1986. When Hasbro launched G.I. Joe, a real American hero toy line in 1982 alongside the Marvel Comics series, it commissioned Marvel Productions to produce a series of fully animated 30-second television commercials, which were broadcast in order to promote the toys in the comics, beginning with an ad for the first issue that aired throughout the spring of 1982. The popularity of these commercials led to the production of a 5-part G.I. Joe miniseries, which aired in 1983, later known as the M.A.S.S device, when it re-aired during the series syndication. The plot centers on the M.A.S.S device, a powerful matter transporter, and G.I. Joe and Cobra race around the world to acquire 3 catalytic elements which power the machine. A second 5-part miniseries followed in 1984, The Revenge of Cobra, with a similar plot that involved the Joes and Cobra traveling around the world to discover the shattered fragments of Cobra's new weather-controlling weapon, the Weather Dominator. Both miniseries were written by Ron Friedman. G.I. Joe was promoted to a full series in 1985, with an initial order for the first season of 55 more episodes, in order to make up for the required 65 episodes for syndication. This season began with a third Friedman-penned 5-part adventure, The Pyramid of Darkness. The story sees most of the existing cast from the 2 previous miniseries held captive by Cobra, while a new assortment of characters, that is, the new 1985 range of toys, thwart Cobra's attempt to surround the Earth with electricity-negating Pyramid of Darkness. Both the new and old characters then shared the spotlight throughout the course of the remaining 50 episodes of the series, which were primarily standalone, single episodes adventures with the occasional 2-part story. A second season of 30 episodes followed in 1986, beginning with a 4th 5-part story, Arise, Serpentor, Arise, in which Cobra scientist Dr. Mindbender, inspired by a dream, uses the DNA of history's most ruthless conquerors and rulers to genetically engineer Serpentor, who upserves Cobra Commander's leadership of Cobra. This miniseries introduced the new 1986 range of toys into the story, which were at the center of most of the stories across the rest of the season. In particular, the miniseries debuted former WWF and then current AWA professional wrestler Sergeant Slaughter as a member of G.I. Joe, played by himself. G.I. Joe the movie, a feature-length film version of the series, was intended to be released theatrically following the release of Transformers the movie. However, the movie encountered unexpected production delays, which allowed the Transformers feature film to be released first. Due to the poor box office performance of Transformers and My Little Pony films, G.I. Joe was regulated to direct-to-video status. The release on VHS on April 20th, 1987, and was later split into a 5-part miniseries for television syndication. The movie follows up on the events of Season 2, revealing that Cobra Commander is actually an agent of a secret civilization known as Cobra La, led by a half-serpent being named Galabulus. The same organization is also revealed to have had a hand in the creation of Serpentor, because the dream that inspired Dr. Mindbender to create him was actually a subconscious suggestion that was implanted into his brain by one of Galabulus's bugs. In addition to Cobra Law, 2 new sub-teams were introduced within the Joe team, the Rawhides and the Renegades, both of which were composed of characters that were introduced into the toy line during its 1987 lineup. Marvel Productions continued to produce the animated commercials for the toy line and comic books, which featured a new theme song with lyrics, "Nobody Beats G.I. Joe," after the broadcast of G.I. Joe the movie, which was intended to set up Season 3. However, the company never got around to producing a 3rd season, because it ended up losing its license due to the competing animation company DIC during pre-production. Michael Charles Hill, who wrote several episodes of the show, had already proposed an outline for Season 3 that would have followed the events of G.I. Joe the movie. In this unmade 3rd season, a criminal organization named The Coil, which is composed of a group of former Cobra elites who were led by Tomax and Zaymot, would have served as a new enemy faction, while mutated Cobra Commander would have tried to secretly rebuild his organization after the destruction of Cobra Law, shifting allegiance between the Coil and the Joes in order to further his ambitions. G.I. Joe was a co-production between Marvel Productions and Sunbow Productions. Sunbow's staff would write the scripts based on the characters and vehicle designs provided by Hasbro, while the artists at Marvel Productions would draw storyboards based on the scripts and record voiceovers. The animation was outsourced to Toei in Japan, who worked on all 95 episodes, as well as G.I. Joe the movie. The G.I. Joe comics and animated series share a few common plot elements that were not products of the toy lines, such as the town of Springfield, the October Guard, and the character of the Baroness, who was only introduced into the toy line in 1984. However, they did not share the same continuity, and as of a result, they differed significantly in terms of how the characters were written and the directions the stories took, particularly regarding the nature of Cobra Commander's true identity. In contrast to the comics, in which non-toy line characters such as G.I. Joe Commanding Officer General Flag and Cobra Scientist Dr. Venom were killed off early during its run, the TV series had to adhere to child programming regulations, and as a result, none of the characters were allowed to use actual firearms, and nobody was ever killed on screen. Instead, characters used laser guns to fight their battles, which were color-coded for each side, red for the Joes and blue for Cobra. Whenever a vehicle was destroyed on screen, the pilot or driver would often be shown exiting from it or parachuting before the destruction. However, the show was still allowed to make reference to off-screen casualties, as the term could be used interchangeably for injuries or death. One particular episode in Season 1, a 2-parter entitled Worlds Without End, in which the Joes are transported to an alternate universe where the Joes have been defeated by Cobra, feature a scene in which 3 members of the Joe team, Steeler, Grunt, and Clutch, find the skeletal remains of their counterparts from that world. The second part of the episode ends with the aforementioned characters deciding to remain in the alternate universe and replace their deceased counterparts. A public safety lesson was usually featured at the end of each episode, using G.I. Joe characters in brief scenarios to impart safety tips to children. These lessons gave birth to the catchphrase, "And knowing is half the battle." In each episode's opening title sequence, voice actor Jackson Beck stated that G.I. Joe is the code name for America's daring, highly trained Special Mission Force. Its purpose, to defend human freedoms against Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world. Because the series was produced as a vehicle to sell the toys, most of the episodes would focus on the newest characters being sold in stores at the time, while older characters would fall by the wayside as they were being phased out from the toy line. Most notably, Hawk, who was part of the 1982 launch lineup and the original G.I. Joe leader in the Marvel Comics, was absent during the entirety of Season 1 in favor of having Duke, a character introduced in 1983, the year when the first miniseries aired, to serve as the leader instead. When Hawk was reintroduced into the toy line with a new action figure in 1986, the character was suddenly part of the team in Season 2 as Duke's superior and the head of G.I. Joe's chain of command, with no explanation for his absence in prior seasons. Deep underground in an undisclosed location, this is Tread Comics presents G.I. Joe, the movie. G.I. Joe, the movie, also known as Action Force, the movie in the UK, is a 1987 animated action-adventure film produced as a spin-off of the animated series G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero, based on the original Hasbro toy line. It was produced by Sunbow Productions and Marvel Productions and was animated in Japan by Toei Animation Corp. Limited. Created at the height of the G.I. Joe craze in the 1980s, G.I. Joe the movie was intended as a theatrical release to be closely followed by the Transformers the movie. However, the G.I. Joe film encountered unexpected production delays, which allowed the Transformers feature to be released first. Due to the poor box office performances of The Transformers the movie and My Little Pony the movie, G.I. Joe the movie was instead released direct-to-video as well as aired on television in syndication, first in feature-length format, and later split into a 5-part miniseries format as part of the series syndication package. While Cobra Commander and Serpentor blame each other's stewardship of Cobra as the root of cause of the organization's failure, Pythona, a woman from a secret civilization, Cobra La, infiltrates the terror drone. While there, she reveals to Serpentor that Cobra La was responsible for inspiring Dr. Mindbender to create Serpentor through dream manipulation. At her urging, Serpentor plans to capture G.I. Joe's latest weapon, the broadcast energy transmitter, known as the BET. Cobra assaults the Joes as they test the BET in the Himalayas. The Joes use the BET to activate their automated weapon systems. Serpentor is captured and Cobra Commander orders a retreat. Cobra Commander leads his troops into Cobra La. As the Joes celebrate their victory, a new group of rookie Joes are brought onto the team, including the allegedly clumsy Jinx, military police officer Law and his dog Order, former basketball player Big Lob, EOD specialist Tunnel Rat, undercover officer Chuckles, and Duke's reckless half-brother, Lieutenant Falcon, a Green Beret. In Cobra Law, the Joe forces are ambushed and detained within the lava-trained living environment. The Cobra soldiers are met by their civilization's leader, Globulus, who has Pythona and his other henchmen, Nemesis Enforcer, arrest Cobra Commander. While there, Cobra learns of their history. 40,000 years ago, Cobra Law was an ancient civilization that ruled Earth. However, the Ice Age, the evolution of humans, and their development of scientific technologies resulted in Cobra Law survivors being forced into caverns within the Himalayas. Cobra Law rebuilt their society in secret as centuries passed. Globulus vowed to destroy humanity so that his people could reclaim the Earth. He eventually discovered a nobleman who was working on biological weapons. The nobleman later became Cobra Commander, charged with conquering the world for Cobra Law. However, Cobra Commander's repeated failures caused Globulus to use a psychic motivator on Dr. Mindbender to create Serpentor. Meanwhile, Zorana tricks Lieutenant Falcon into infiltrating Serpentor's holding cell. For abandoning his training, Lieutenant Falcon is put on guard duty by Duke. After Falcon abandons his post to flirt with Jinx, the Dreadnoks and Nemesis Enforcer free Serpentor, injuring Alpine, Bazooka, and Gung Ho in the process. General Hawk scolds Falcon for abandoning his post and confines him to his quarters until court-martial. In Cobra Law, Cobra Commander is also tried, and Globulus reveals his plans to launch spore pods filled with mutative spores into space and use the BET to hatch them, thus dooming humanity. He punishes Cobra Commander for his repeated failures following his trial by exposing him to the spores, which transforms Cobra Commander into a snake. He flees and makes his way to the Joe's camp with Roadblock. Convinced by Duke to spare Falcon from harsh punishment, General Hawk reassigns Falcon to the slaughterhouse, where he is to be retrained by Sergeant Slaughter and his renegades, consisting of ex-Viper Mercer, former football player Red Dog, and former acrobat Taurus. On a weaponless recon mission into the Terrordrome, the five learn of Cobra's plans and that the Baroness has discovered the location of the BET. As Falcon and the others destroy the Terrordrome, Cobra launches an assault on the Joes. The Joes launch a counterattack on Cobra, but the BET is stolen. Serpentor attempts to kill Falcon, but Duke intervenes and falls into a coma. Falcon, the Renegades, and the new recruits head to the Himalayas to stop Cobra Law. The G.I. Joe team is led to Cobra Law's lair by snake-formed Cobra Commander. The new recruits prove themselves valuable soldiers as the Joes rescue their captive teammates. Falcon, Jinx, and Sergeant Slaughter confront Globulus, Pythona, and Serpentor. The ensuing fight climaxes in Jinx and Slaughter, sending Pythona and Nemesis Enforcer falling to their apparent demise. Finally, Falcon sends Serpentor out on Cobra Law and reconfigures the BET to incinerate the spore pods in space. The BET overloads, destroying Cobra Law as Globulus escapes. Immediately following the batter, the strike team receives news that Duke has come out of his coma and is recovering. The writers for G.I. Joe the movie did not originally intend for Cobra La to be the name of the rival civilization. This was merely a placeholder name in the drafts until a more alien label came to mind. But the Hasbro executives fell in love with the name Cobra La and forced the writers to keep it. In the film's original script, Duke dies in battle after receiving a wound from a snake spear hurled by Serpentor. After this was written into the script, it inspired the death of Autobot leader Optimus Prime in The Transformers the movie while both films were in production. Due to production delays on G.I. Joe the movies, The Transformers the movie was released into theaters first, causing huge repercussions on the ending of G.I. Joe the movie. Optimus Prime's death sparked a severe backlash amongst both fans and parents, and Hasbro reversed their decision on allowing Duke's death. While the scene was kept, replacement dialogue was inserted stating that Duke had gone into a coma. During the film's ending, it is stated that Duke has come out of his coma. Writer and story editor Buzz Dixon said in an interview with JoeHeadquarters.com, quote unquote, "If you watch the visuals and don't listen to the soundtrack, it is obvious Duke dies." In the original script, the Joes also held his funeral prior to the final battle.